Hello and welcome to the Arsenal Injury Show. That's right, we've got another surgery to talk about. This is, believe it or not, the Arsenal News Show. Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys and girls for another episode of what is our Arsenal News Show. Joining you every single morning at 8 a.m. UK time. Thank you, as always, for joining me and making this a part of your morning routines. It is incredibly appreciated. I hope you've had a fantastic week so far. I hope things are going well. I hope that everything is good. And thank you, as always, for making this a part of your morning routine. Good morning to Grant, to James, to Steve, to Knowledge, Carlton, Shari, Matt G, Tom, Martin, other Martin, Glenn, NSW, Jamil. We've got Carl and Adrian and Rich and Rowan and Paul Jr. and Paul Block, Maximius, Jose, Clincy, Alex, Bavin, Christopher, and plenty more. Love you guys and girls as well in the chat. Thank you, as always, for joining me and making this your place to go on this cold, chilly, frosty, however many superlatives to do with the colour blue, I guess. Blue's obviously representing cold usually, isn't it? Do you ever those water coolers that had like the blue button and the grey button as kind of, and when you press, you're thinking, well, which one of these is the cold? Because it must be that one is like icy cold or like room maybe, and the other one's really cold. Why won't they just put like a warmer colour and blue or white? Anyway, I'm going off on a tangent. You can tell it's been a long time since Arsenal played another game, or we've got a week without football until the weekend. But good morning to you all. Join us in the chat box. Please make sure you join us tomorrow if you can. Of course, I'm saying make sure you do. If you haven't bought a ticket, you can't. But thank you to those that have. I'm very, very pleased to be welcoming so many of you to our live event tomorrow. I should say it's doors open at 6:30, 7 o'clock show starts. Be there ASAP, of course. Have your tickets with you with your QR code. We'll be scanning those as you come through the door. So make sure you have those to hand. And I can't wait to host you all and to enjoy a really fun evening of Arsenal chat, debate, and discussing how many injuries we've got. Anyway, let's crack on with today's story, shall we? We start with a roundup of all the Champions League action from last night, because there is, of course, quite a big ramification for the Gunners. Bayern Munich had to scrape past Celtic 1-0. Up until the 95th minute before they got that all-important goal to see them through that would have seen them go indeed to extra time and penalties potentially had they not have scored so late on. But Bayern Munich do progress just past the Scottish champions. Benfica in a brilliant game with Monaco, 3-3 on the night. 4-3 on aggregate. Fantastic example of kind of the chaos, if you like, of Champions League football. Mika Biereth was not involved until he came on as a substitute. And maybe they should have had him on sooner. Could have been the difference maker in their game against Benfica on the night. It proved to be too short in the end. 4-3 winners, Benfica. Atalanta knocked out 5-2 by Club Brugge. Brilliant result for the Belgian club as well. Absolutely fantastic to see them get through and knock out a very, very impressive Italian side this season in Serie A. And then, of course, the biggest upset, I think, Feyenoord knocking out AC Milan in the San Siro. A 1-1 draw, 2 red cards, one for each team on the night as well, giving Feyenoord a 2-1 aggregate victory. Of course, this has relevance to Arsenal because Feyenoord are one of the teams that could get drawn with Arsenal moving forward. So it will be down now to tonight's game to decide who it will be. Dortmund take on Sporting. Real Madrid winning 3-2 against Manchester City. PSG against Brest. They're already 3-0 up, as are Dortmund in their tie. And then it's PSV against Juve. PSV are at home. Juventus have a 2-1 aggregate lead so far. And of course, the winner of that or Feyenoord will be playing Arsenal in the last 16. So at the moment, it looks more like to be Feyenoord or Juve, but it could be either one of those two. But we'll have more information about that. We'll talk about that tomorrow as well after the results. So tune in to get the reaction to that. we will see the women's game against Crystal Palace rescheduled. Well, there's a new venue, in fact, for the game. The WSL match against Crystal Palace will now take place at Sutton United on Sunday, March 30th. The broadcast picks for this round will follow shortly, and ticket information will be on the Arsenal website, of course. But Arsenal announcing a new venue for that game against Crystal Palace. So if you're planning on attending that, just be in mind that that game has indeed changed its venue. So just be aware for your travel plans and strategies. Moving into the transfer window briefly, and according to Tom Buggett of the Athletic, Toronto FC are planning on signing Zane Monlouis, the Arsenal youth defender. Has been at the club for quite a while now. Doesn't look like he will be breaking into the Arsenal senior team, however, and Arsenal will be seeing another one of their young stars moving away from the club. Of course, we've seen a number of young players of that under 21s or under 18 setup leave in the last 12 to 18 months. And Zane Monlouis appears to be one. He's very rated, actually, this guy. There's been a lot of positive thoughts said about Zane, but a move to Toronto would, of course, give him much more opportunity to play at a senior level and perhaps to build up a body of work at a senior level before maybe returning to Europe. I guess we will wait and see. But Zane Monlouis looking to be a switch to a more regular aspect of the of just senior football, I guess. Speaking and staying with the youth players, Andre Harriman-Annous was spotted in training with the first team once again. Yesterday, Arsenal released a number of images of Arsenal training, and the young 17-year-old forward was indeed spotted training with the group. He is a player that can play across the front three. He's not limited to playing in just one position, and of course has already been playing a key role in Arsenal's UEFA Youth League situation. He scored against PSG in the UEFA Youth League during the campaign as well. Very highly rated young player. Very good attacking option, and maybe we see some of him before the end of the season, but training with the team. Other things noticed, you may see that, of course, William Saliba in this picture and Harriman-Annous are wearing slightly different coloured kits. The darker kind of black kit is worn by the senior side, the navy colour kit worn by the youth team. But interestingly, a number of players wearing that dark black kit, including, of course, Miles Lewis-Skelly and Ethan Nwaneri, perhaps unsurprisingly. But Butler Oyedeji, the 22-year-old centre-forward, also been part of that youth team as well. He also has been given a squad promotion, it appears, because he too was wearing the senior first-team kit as well. So it seems he'll be part of that squad until the end of the season also. Despite looking with a fine-tooth comb for all of the pictures, I couldn't spot Jakub Kiwior. I don't know if that's just me being a bit blind, but I couldn't spot Jakub Kiwior in any of the pictures put up on the Arsenal website. The last time Kiwior was spotted in training was last week on February 14th. However, he was indeed in the squad for the game against Leicester City at the weekend, but there was no sign of Kiwior at all. So yeah, there you go. Hopefully he's fine. He's doing separate number 9 training, says James. Very possibly our new striker in waiting. And lastly, I did promise you we'd talk about another injury to another player that, of course, was required surgery, and that is indeed Takehiro Tomiyasu. The Japanese international posted to his Instagram page yesterday a message for, of course, supporters. It turns out that this surgery had been done some time ago already. He says, "I've had surgery on my knee a few days ago, and I've already started my rehab to do what I love the most again. It has been the toughest period of my career for sure, and it carries on a bit more, but I won't give up. Thank you for your support." It's such a shame that Tomiyasu is having to go through this. Tomiyasu is a very good defender. When he's fully fit, Tomiyasu is a very good player. There's without a doubt that had he been fit over the course of his career, the 18-odd million quid that we paid for him would have been an absolute bargain. Unfortunately, injuries have taken hold of this player's career in the most horrible way. And like so many players before him, think about Abu Diaby, think about Jack Wilshere, think about Santi Cazorla. These injuries have just been just absolutely incessant. and never giving him a moment's rest. And it's mad, really, because, yes, he had some injuries prior to arriving at Arsenal, but they weren't major. They weren't major issues. He missed like a cluster of games here and there on a few occasions during his time with Bologna. But it's just nowhere near the level of injury he suffered at Arsenal. He's in total, the first injury he suffered, he missed 11 games with a calf injury, then 4 games with a muscular problem, then 16 games after having a knee injury, had to have surgery, 6 games with a calf injury, another 7 games last season with a calf injury, 9 games with this knee injury earlier this season, and now, of course, he's missed 29 matches. 29 matches in this most recent issue that he has suffered. You've got to feel for the guy. Of course, from a summer perspective, it was most likely that he probably would have been moved on had he have returned to fitness because of the situation. But a knee surgery, of course, requires quite a lengthy recovery time. We don't know the specifics of what the injury is or what's being corrected. It could be similar to the Ben White surgery, of course, which happened back in, what was it? Was it November? Ben White last played. So we have a look. Maybe it's longer ago than that. His surgery was, it was November. And he's only just coming back now. So it's November, December, January, February, 4 months. So it could be that he's back for next season. Clive says, if Tommy had stayed fit, I think we win at least one of the last 2 Premier Leagues. Even this year, to stop the Partey right-back thing, we would have been top. It's a really good point. And it shows you kind of what Arsenal have missed in losing Tomiyasu. We wouldn't be playing Partey at right back. We wouldn't have maybe lost Saliba at the end of that season in 22-23. We would have had more cover there for him. It's just gutting. It's absolutely gutting. And it has had a really, really big effect. Mohammed says, we gave him a new contract. He was fit at the time we gave him a new contract, was he not? Pretty sure he was fit. He hadn't suffered that knee injury by that point. This is a separate injury to what he suffered before. The knee injury was not something he had suffered prior to this, other than that knee injury in his first season. He was back, he was playing, and that's why they gave him a new contract. But this new knee injury, unfortunately, is something separate to what he had experienced around the sign of that new contract extension. It's a bit brutal, Mohammed, I'll be honest, a bit brutal there. Arsenal are an establishment where we have to look after our players, look after our own, and I'm glad that we are doing enough to try and look after Tomiyasu. Right, let's move to part 2 and your question, shall we? Right after this. Right, let's jump to part 2, shall we? And go into the chat box. Annie says, an entire season for the club, decide that he needed an operation. It's almost as if, Andy, they've got some medical experts that have a better idea of what the steps are than you. It's almost as it, but feel free to show me your diplomas. King says, injury-prone players are a bigger problem than poor defensive players because they're very hard to get rid of, and they can trap you into keeping them longer than what's good, obviously, for the club. This is true. It's also why there is a lot of effort that does go into kind of looking into the injury records of players. It's why I think maybe that Arsenal didn't end up moving for somebody like Alexander Isak in the period of time that he was at Real Sociedad, that the big money fee, but also the associated injuries that Isak had maybe would have put off clubs. And maybe that's why it ended up being Newcastle that landed Isak, for example. But then there are other players, of course, like Ricardo Calafiori, who Arsenal signed and have seen significant injuries kind of this season with him. He did have a very clear 23-24 campaign. He didn't really suffer any issues at all during that period, which maybe led Arsenal to believe he got over those problems. And then you've got Miko Marino, of course, who's barely ever suffered an injury and then comes to Arsenal and breaks his shoulder bone. So it's, very difficult, isn't it? Very difficult indeed. Ashley says, most important player for games before the interlull. For me, it's Rice with Leo, Martin, and Ethan in the half space across. Marino going to help as well. Rice has missed some big-headed chances this season. Hope he works on it more. It's a fair point. He has missed some big-headed opportunities. I remember the one he missed against Manchester United. Was there one against Liverpool? trying to remember back now, but certainly the one against Man United stands out as a big miss at the time. Shall we scroll up? I feel like I might have missed some other comments earlier on in the show. Paul says Tomiyasu at left back against Liverpool was his best ever game for Arsenal. Salah was more like salad that game. He shut Salah down and Nunez to a degree so well when we won that game. Was it 4-2 in the end? Suti says, Tom, did you read Atalanta manager's comments regarding Lookman's penalty? He said he's one of the worst penalty takers ever. Retegui missed against Arsenal, but he didn't have the same energy. I can't say, Suti, that I did see those comments. Maybe Lookman's missed more penalties than Retegui. To be fair, the Retegui penalty was, I think, more so a David Raya masterclass save than a bad penalty miss. But I've not seen the Lookman penalty to be able to comment. But if he's the worst penalty taker he's ever seen, why is he not putting someone else on penalties? Surely that's on him. Surely that's on the manager for not doing that, other than giving it to somebody else. Newcastle, yes, missed a headed chance against Newcastle. You're right. King says, I am wrong to say that Tomiyasu had a calf issues before he joined Arsenal. No, you're not wrong. He had, as we just pointed out, he had a couple of calf issues before he joined Arsenal, but it wasn't, as I say, it wasn't like they peppered his career by any stretch of the imagination. Amir says, Tommy's injury history before joining us even wasn't that bad. It just got worse in these last 2 seasons. And sometimes that happens. I think Thomas Partey never had an injury before he joined Arsenal. Ollie Watkins never had an injury. He was linked to Arsenal and got an injury. I mean, all it takes is just your name being mentioned in a breath with Arsenal to suffer an injury these days. Damien says, why not try more youth players? I mean, Arsenal are trying plenty of youth players. We've integrated 2 this season into the first team, Winery and Lewis Skelly. So I think we will see more youth players given opportunity, maybe, with the injuries that we've got right now. But I don't think we can complain about Arsenal for not giving youth a chance this season, that's for sure. Maximus says, Tom, I think we need a new hospital jersey. Adidas can think on those lines with the number of players on the medical table. Surely we need some merchandise attached to our injury problems. James says, with the increase in the fixture schedule, how many players should a squad consist of ideally? I think that the expansion of a squad size to 30 with a bench of 12 like the Champions League has, I think is probably the best way forwards. I think that probably offers clubs the best opportunity to have a kind of a really sizable team. You could have 23 players in a squad, have 12 players on the bench. Champions League, of course, as I mentioned, has that many. Maybe that's the way forwards to helping the situation to a degree, even if Arteta would ever use his bench or rotate, if at all. Logan says, is Liverpool's lack of injuries down to luck or better careful coaching? It's just luck, Logan. It's just luck, because if you look at Liverpool's injury history prior to this season, it's not been good. So I guess there's maybe just a balancing out of that as well. Roy says, Tom, where does the £65,000 fine go? Is it to the PGMOL or is it the Christmas party fund? I don't actually. I think it goes to the FA. I think the FA get the money. I don't know. Where do FA fines get paid? Let's have a look. FA fines are paid. Yeah, okay, that's fine. Amateur FA Football Services Guide. I don't know if it goes to grassroots, does it? Does it go into grassroots stuff? I don't know where the fines go. Oh, there's a debt recovery file. Is that one? No, that doesn't seem to be it. I don't know. I don't know exactly where the fines go. But I would assume it would go into kind of, grassroots. If you pay the FA, I guess it would go into like that. Maybe the upkeep of the maintenance of Wembley Stadium. I don't know. But yeah, haven't got an idea about that. Martin says, Tom, can you explain to people that when clubs and players are fined for misconduct, it is the FA and not the PGMOL who impose the fines? They are completely separate. I mean, you've just explained it, Martin. The PGMOL don't impose the fine. The FA uphold the rules. The PGMOL are just the referees. PGMOL are just the officials. They book players, they red or yellow card them, VAR, we hope, the decisions. And based upon, of course, the referee's report that the FA receives, the FA will file to an independent regulatory commission a recommendation or they will charge a team first, and then, of course, that team has a time of period to respond to that charge. If they disagree with that charge or they accept that charge, there are then following actions. In the case of this most recent one, I wrote a piece about this yesterday. Arsenal, of course, were charged for a breach of the E20.1 FA rule regarding players surrounding the referee in response to that Miles Lewis Skelly red card. Arsenal accepted the charge, but they made arguments alongside the acceptance of that charge, including the fact that this was their first breach this season. It was their first breach since 22-23. The decision, of course, ended up being overturned, which explained the emotional kind of element to the players. And they felt that that should have been taken into account. The FA responded by saying that they felt that the 9 players that surrounded the referee was significant. They felt that the 2 minutes and 15 seconds that players were protesting with the official, even after Jurriën Timber got a yellow card in that moment, also highlighted an issue. What else was there? They felt that I can't remember what the other points were. I wrote the article yesterday. It shows my brain is completely fried by this stage. Let me find it so I can read it. The red card issued to Miles Lewis Skelly being overturned on appeal does not justify the reaction of the Arsenal's players surrounding the match official and affords no mitigation. Competing at the top end of the Premier League does not mitigate the behaviour. Players representing a high-profile club competing at the top of the Premier League in a fixture screened live across the world bear a responsibility to conduct themselves properly. The FA recommended, so the standard fine for an E20.1 rule breach is £20,000. That's the standard. The FA recommended a fine no less than 4 times that much. £80,000 the FA wanted to be the recommended fine for Arsenal. The Independent Regulatory Commission disagreed with that and gave Arsenal a £65,000 fine after assessing all of the arguments put forward by both Arsenal and the FA. So still more than 3 times the standard fine. I think it's nuts that it wasn't taken into account the context of the decision being incorrect and the decision being overturned through a successful appeal. I think is absolutely nuts. I think it's a really bad look. I think it's teenager-ish. I think it's a last word type thing, and it just falls really badly on the authorities that kind of are associated with this situation. But yeah, Martin is right. It's not on the PGMOL to fine people. That's on the FA. The FA do that. But of course, that goes off of the referee's report. Of course, that is submitted. Mr. Thuggis is not sure about the squad size increase. It would give rich teams an advantage over the others. I doubt we would spend a lot to fill the space. I mean, yes, it would be more beneficial for teams with more money readily available. Of course it would. But it's also better for the welfare of those players. So I think there is a good argument still for the increase of those squad sizes. Yes, it would make it tougher for those smaller clubs. You're absolutely right. But I think player welfare has to be considered in this. King says, I wish the FA would have this energy towards the referees. VAR and Howard are all failing to implement its own rules, and there is definitely something that is wrong. Joe says, basically, Webb made the point to mention the abuse that officials had received and did admit that it was the wrong decision, which I was shocked at. You could hear the VAR as well. Yeah, obviously, if you haven't yet watched Howard Webb and Michael Owen went over the Miles Lewis Skelly situation, you can listen to the audio of Michael Oliver and the VAR who agree with the decision. Howard Webb says that we would recommend a yellow card in this situation, not a red card. He did talk about, of course, the abuse, and you know, I don't really know why people get so butthurt about like the discussion about the abuse. If you've sent death threats to Michael Oliver, you're a disgusting human being. I don't care what you think of Michael Oliver. I don't care how we think of him as an official. And personally, I don't think he's been very good or is even a relevant standard to be, you know, officiating the Champions League from an honest opinion standpoint based upon what we've experienced as Arsenal fans and as football fans over the last however many years. It doesn't justify death threats. It doesn't justify abuse at all, ever. So if you've been engaging in that, that's on you. That's a you problem. So you need to, you know, just get real about it and deal with it, so on and so forth. Be objective, be critical, be scrutinizing for all what we care about. But you're not helping the situation by sending any absolute bile that we see online. Cowardly behavior. Ashley asking the question: do we keep Partey for an extra year? I feel like we've covered this. You've got my opinion on this. Libark says, Tommy boy, is it just me? Because I feel like every time Liverpool have a big away game, the home team has major injury doubts. Of course, Liverpool play Aston Villa this evening. I think there is some team news issues. Let me see if I can find Aston Villa's team news. Aston Villa could be without 7 players for this game. Unai Emery could be without 7 players for the match. Amadou Onana and Ross Barkley are definitely out of the match alongside Camara and Torres. There is hope that Konsa and Matty Cash and forward Leon Bailey could feature, although all are doubtful. Yeah, great. Is Watkins back? I think Watkins is back. Watkins is back by now. I think Rashford's also involved as well. So yeah, but Pau Torres and Ezri Konsa being missing is a big, big blow to them. Meanwhile, everyone's available. Liverpool, of course they are. Juice World says, if you were a billionaire, would you buy the club? God, I don't know. Would I buy Arsenal Football Club if I could afford to buy Arsenal? Do I really want that stress? I feel like if I was a billionaire, I feel like if I was a billionaire and I was to buy a football club, I'd probably go Football Manager style. I'd probably invest in like a smaller team, somewhere really nice in the world, and just try and grow that club up. And because I want to stay a fan of Arsenal. I don't want to be an employee of Arsenal or even own Arsenal. I want to be a fan of Arsenal. And I feel like that detachment, as soon as you get involved with the club, like you're detaching your fandom from it. So I feel like Rich says I'd buy Spurs and sell all their players. I think you'd be doing them a favour, Rich, to be honest. So I don't necessarily think that is is such an easy solution to your problems. If I was a billionaire, I'd probably be more inclined to buy another club than Arsenal. Stay a fan of Arsenal. Maybe buy a club of their multi-club model, but yeah, there is. I don't think I would. I'm not sure I would. You'd have to be not just a billionaire, but a multi-billionaire to convince the Cronkies to sell anyway. Curtis says Oliver should have got roses in a box of chocolate. Oliver did know that what he was doing. He's a narcissist. He loves to hate. I mean, whether or not you believe all of that, of course, is irrelevant to the abuse, of course, that he suffered. James says, do they need to borrow Marino for a night to bang in a few? Spurs could do with anybody right now. Ashley says, most of our budget is going on the striker and the winger, plus a backup goalkeeper, no more for a second midfielder. I think that the summer window is pretty... it's pretty clear what we're going to do. So you centre forward, defensive midfielder, backup goalkeeper, I think a defender. I don't think a winger necessarily is so obvious. I think we'd only sign a winger if we sold one of Martinelli or Trossard. If we don't sign one of those two, I think it will be more of an attacking midfield, versatile, wide playmaker, if any, kind of like as I talked about, an Eber Eze. I think Eze is probably the perfect profile for that extra attacking option as well. Labark says, you just know it's going to pan out that way over the next few weeks, breaking Haaland out for 3 weeks, breaking Isak out for a month just before they play Liverpool. Yeah. Joseph, if you could, Tom, and you had the chance, would you be the Arsenal? No, of course I wouldn't. I'm not a manager. Of course I wouldn't be Arsenal manager. Arteta do a far better job than me. Why would I want to do that to Arsenal? Why would I ever want to do that to the club? I'm not a manager. I'm not a coach. I've never done any kind of that sort of training. I did do some low-level coaching bad stuff when I was younger. But why would I do that? It's like when people turn around and say, oh, yeah, I'd love to have a go at being an Arsenal manager. Really? You? Of course, I'm sorry to take away the arrogance of you, but you're not going to be better than what we got, mate. So, no, of course I wouldn't want to be Arsenal manager. Rich says, what about if you could be the mascot? Oh, I am tall enough to be Gunnosaurus. But yeah, again, no, I don't think so. I don't think I could do that justice. I think I'd end up getting annoyed at the kids at halftime scoring too many of those penalties, and I'd end up saving them. I'd just making a real effort to stop any penalties being scored. You see a little kid walk up to the ball, slowly kick it towards the goal, the ball's trickling in, and usually what happens is Gunnosaurus kind of dives over it or dives round it or dives the other way. The ball trickles into the net. What I do, just as the ball is about to cross the line, smash! Just boot the ball as far as I could off the line. I'd be an evil Gunnosaurus, is what I'd be. So, yeah, you don't want that. You don't want that. Amberly says, did you see the face plant Gunnosaurus did at the weekend in the women's NLD? Don't think I'd fancy that. No? Let me see. Is there a video? Gunnosaurus. Let me see. Come on. Please tell me there's a video. Please tell me there's a video. Well, to be fair, there is quite a good video on February 16th of Gunnosaurus getting nutmegged. I think by a ball boy, which is pretty cool. But no, I've not seen. Any of the face plants. So no, I've not. If you've got a video of it, send it to me after the show, please. I'd love to see it. Eddie says, hi, Tom. If the Premier League is the best league in the world, why can't they get the best referees from other countries to be in charge of the games? Is there a rule against that? There's no rule against it. Jared Gillett, of course, came in from Australia. So, no, there's no rules against it, I don't think. But I will be very honest with you about this. If you go to speak to nations, friends, family members, just fans of clubs in other countries, they moan about referees just as much as we do. So it's not necessarily like that's the solution to our problems. Gersh says, how would you fit Nwaneri, Saka, and Odegaard to same 11? If you had to, which I don't think you have to, I'd put Nwaneri on the left, Saka on the right, and Odegaard in the 8. But we don't have to do that. You know, when Saka and Odegaard comes back, Nwaneri goes on the bench. He's the ready-made Saka rotational option for us that we've been crying out for. Well, people have been saying we have to sign Mbuemo. We have to sign these right-sided players. No, we don't. We've got Nwaneri. He's a ready-made player. You can't moan at Arsenal running players into the ground and then suggest that we need to start Nwaneri from now on in every single game. It's just hypocrisy. So that's how I would fit them all three if I had to, but you don't have to. So, yeah, I don't get this contradiction that people are falling into. Martin says, we're basing our opinion on foreign referees on the very few that we see in the Champions League. James says, why would you need to? Michael Oliver is possibly the best referee in the world. Alex says, why are most referees from our league around Manchester? Is it a coincidence or do we specifically choose from around there? How can't they see that creates a conflict of interest? Again, I don't really know why or how that has happened. I imagine there's kind of a pool of refereeing talent up north. I don't know. Maybe they talk about being friends. We've heard it from Mike Dean. Maybe it's who know, not what you know sometimes about it. I don't know how that's happened. It can't just be a coincidence, though. There has to be something else behind it. Maximian says, Tom, are you following the Jude Bellingham red card incident and its subsequent Real Madrid fallout with La Liga? A little bit. So basically my understanding is that he said something, it got lost in translation, he was sent off. There's a Daily Mail headline here, which gives me a little pause for thought. It says Real Madrid are considering leaving La Liga over Jude Bellingham red card row, with 3 leagues in the running to become their new home. Wild Report in Spain have claimed, Sport is the outlet in Spain, that have claimed that Real Madrid could make a stunning move to join a different league in Europe amid frustrations over officiating in Spain. The Spanish referee accused the former Birmingham City Wonder Kid of shouting F you in his direction as Bellingham vented his frustration. Nevertheless, Bellingham's account of the scenario is different, with the 21-year-old adamant that he said F off. He also claimed that the language used was aimed at himself in frustration rather than at the match official. Okay, so he's had an incident. He said F off, but he said it more to the ether than directed at the referee. He said it. If the referee has interpreted that as dissent, I don't think he can have too many complaints. I'll just take the red card and move on. I get the frustration. I do. But if you're shouting that could easily be interpreted as being aimed at the referee. Maybe I'm being a little bit OTT about it. But if he said F off in proximity, I'm sure that there are rules as well that I'm sure that there are rules in place in football about swearing in the vicinity of the referee. Just swearing. I don't think it necessarily needs to be at the referee. I think if you just swear in the vicinity of the referee, it can be considered an offence. I may be wrong. I think Martin, were you a Martin Harvey? Were you a referee back in the day? You always ask a lot of referee questions. Maybe you're just salty. I'm sure that there's a rule about kind of swearing in the vicinity of referees can get you booked or can get you sent off. Maybe there's a rule. Let me know, but I don't know if if indeed I'm being over the top about that. But I don't necessarily think Drew can have too many complaints if he's been sent off for swearing. And I mean, I know players do it all the time and don't get sent off, but if it's, I mean, I don't know how much credit there is in that source from Spain about Real Madrid potentially leaving the league, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Sam says, are they going to a league where they don't understand the English as well? I mean, everyone understands F off. No, everyone knows those words at that level, especially if you're a referee in a European league. You're going to be very much well aware of what F off means. James says, if you take away swearing from footballers, that's 85% of the vocabulary gone. Wazza says there is a rule about using foul and abusive language. I mean, there you go. So I mean, it's probably over the top. It probably is a little bit extra. It's probably a little bit extreme. But he said it. He said it. So, and he's admitted to saying it. So I don't really know what the fuss is about too much. I have no doubt that it's particularly in Spain, we have seen a lot of incidents in Spain. The Vinicius Junior stuff is very well documented. And the frustrations around racism, particularly in Spain, is a really big issue. It's a big issue in Spain. And these situations are very, very concerning, and obviously are worthy of discussion and worthy of attention, because it needs to be discussed to try and stamp that type of thing. I don't know if this is an example of that. I don't know, but we do know that there is a racial issue that exists in Spain, because it's so well documented. It's not just Spain, obviously, but there is one there. There is one here in England, and there is still a massive racial issue, not just in football but in society in general. But when it comes to football, of course, there is still a big racism problem. Ollie says Tomiyasu is injury because he can't be bothered to play. It's like when you used to pretend you'll be ill so your mum would miss school. He's probably laid in bed eating crisps. Yeah, but Ollie, I'm sure that's probably what you're doing with your life at the moment. James says, can spitting and snotting become a yellow card offence as well, please? I might be taking it a bit far. Amaro Gooner says, Real Madrid are whingers. Just look at the Ballon d'Or. I mean, yeah, the Ballon d'Or situation was pure whingery. Real Madrid proper whingers about the Ballon d'Or. And, while Man City put up that big kind of... that huge tifo, didn't they? Well, what was the tifo for Man? What did it read? Tifo, Man City, Real Madrid. It was. Let me find it. Stop crying your heart out. With Rodri winning the Ballon d'Or. I mean, it's funny. It's quite a funny tifo, but ultimately, it was a really risky move, because Real Madrid are in a really good place. Man City are not. The likelihood is they were going to get beaten, and therefore the memes came out. And so when you put a tifo up with the word "stop crying your heart out," when you're Manchester City and we see moaning and stuff about it, it was way too risky. But yeah, it was funny. I quite like the joke, but it was way too risky. Let's go to Rich says racism in football is terrible, but I don't get what it has to do with the Bellingham swearing at the referee. I guess because there's always going to be a conflation, isn't there? There's always going to be a conflation and a discussion about where this stems from, because Real Madrid in particular and Vinicius Junior in particular have been subjected to racial abuse at different grounds across Spain, and so whenever this conversation comes up and you are dealing with a player who isn't white, then you are going to have this discussion. This discussion is going to come in some way into the lexicon of the conversation. It just is, and it is going to become part of that. So yeah, it's. I'm very happy talking about these topics. We talk about these topics all the time on the channel, and I don't shy away from talking about these topics because I think it's important. I think it's particularly important as a white guy to talk about racism. So yeah, I think it's important, but I don't know how much it conflates with this scenario, but it would be, I think, ignorant not to bring up that side of it potentially. Jerome says, "What do you mean by lexicon?" In the conversation, in the wording, in the words that we're using of this conversation, that's what it means. Lexicography is the study of words, right? Or have I just made that up? I'm pretty sure it is. Lexicon is the vocabulary of a person, language, or branch of knowledge. So there you go. Vivian says, "Do as we did as children. Use substitute words for swear. Substitute words in. Gosh darn it." Yeah, things like that. Rich says, "I don't want to be unsympathetic, but I think this isn't their strongest case. Most of the attacks on Vinny have been completely unprovoked." Obviously, I think it's important, Rich, to be very careful here, because if we're starting to talk about racism, and when we're using words like provoked and unprovoked, you're getting into some very murky water when you start to conflate the word racism and provoked and unprovoked. So just be careful, because it's when you start saying that racism was provoked, you're going to get into a very, very difficult situation, and one that's never, ever, ever, ever going to be justifiable. No matter how much is provoked, it's never, ever, ever going to be justifiable. So be very, very careful. King says, "Gavin, you're actually talking rubbish right now. There is a big issue with racism in football in the UK, and unfortunately, a lot of players still get racially abused." I missed the comment. Shall I scroll up? Gavin says, "I don't think there's a racism issue in football in the UK at all. Look at the mix of players. A few fans don't count." Gavin, I'm sorry, mate, but you're burying your head in the sand. All you need to do is have a look around at the latest problems that we have. So in 2023, anti-discrimination charity Kick It Out says there has been a 65% rise in reports of abusive behaviour in the UK in the last year. The organisation said it had received 1,007 reports in total, which includes both people playing on an amateur and professional teams, as well as incidents on social media. Just under half of the reports, 43%, at a non-professional level, were made by players players aged under 18. Of the 105 cases reported by young people, the majority of those, 98, were reported by boys only, while only 7, this is the BBC report, while only 7 reports involved in young female players. So overall, the report found that 65.1% rise in reported incidents of discrimination during the 22-23 football season compared to the previous season. Racism remains the most commonly reported form of discrimination, accounting for nearly half of all reports at both grassroots and professional level, as well as on social media. Reports of online abuse had increased from 74 to 281, a rise of 279%, or reports of sexist behaviour were shown to have risen from 16 to 80, up by 400%. So to suggest that there isn't a racism problem in football, I don't know what world you are living on. But all you need to do is go and have a look at the actual facts and the data, and you will find out that it very, very much is still a big, big issue when it comes to the UK and particularly racism in football and in society in general. And it continues to be something that we need to talk about. Chris says, "I know that people don't support certain teams anymore because the teams have mainly black players in them." Wow, really? That's incredible, Chris. If that is true, that is absolutely incredible. Let's go to Joe says, "You can see backhanded racism even in the media, with certain events having certain players covering the story. I remember when England last lost, Saka, who played 10 minutes, was the face of so many papers." There's a systemic issue, that's the word here. There is a systemic issue. And it's something that we need to continue to fight. And unfortunately, Gavin, when there's people like you that just stick your head in the sand and just refuse to admit that there is any issue, despite me giving you their very clear and obvious data that shows that it's significantly is not just present, but is obviously on the increase. And you're not going, you know what, Tom? I hold my hands up. I was wrong. You've presented facts. You've presented evidence. There is an issue with racism here in the UK. I take it back because you've given me the facts. You've given me the evidence. There is nowhere for me to go but to hold my hands up and say, yeah, there is definitely a problem. And I sincerely hope, Gavin, that is the response. If indeed you reply, I hope you reply because it would look pretty bad if you don't. But that is the only avenue. That is the only avenue after looking at that data, looking at that scenario. Rara says you can see backhanded media from people even in chat boxes, like the guy who referenced Tomiyasu in regards to a sushi chef. If someone insinuated I should be a curry chef, I'm quoting Raj here, I would be very offended. I think that's really important to point out. It's the insensitivity of it. It's people thinking it's just fine to say things like that. I think, Raj, you raise a very good point. These comments that you have quoted there are horrible. Some people turn around and say some pretty horrible things, and certainly should be. Gavin has responded, said, reports of harsh words aren't the proper measure. Oh, my goodness gracious me, Gavin. Oh, goodness gracious me. They happen for many reasons. I think I'm going to leave you with that. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening. I guess there is going to be people that will always just are so ignorant and so dismissive of this, that despite being handed blatant facts and data and evidence, that they will continue to go, no, it doesn't happen. It might not be racism. So this argument that all of that, I just want to read you some of those again. Obviously, of all those types, so there has been found a 65.1% in rise in reported incidents of discrimination during the 22-23 football season compared to the previous season. 65.1% increase in discrimination during the 22-23 season. The report continues. Racism remains the most commonly reported form of discrimination, accounting for nearly half of all reports at both grassroots and professional level, as well as on social media. Grassroots means that all football is non-professional, of course. Reports of online abuse had increased from 74 to 281, a rise of 279%, while reports of sexist behaviour were shown to have risen from 16 to 80, up by 400%. It's so sad. And unfortunately, it is people like Gavin that stop us from tackling this problem. I've no shame in saying that. Gavin, sadly, is a member of this channel as well, as I can see. It's a real shame. People are so dismissive of this, but it's just wrong. It's just wrong. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening. Really appreciate your time as always. Have a fantastic rest of your day. Enjoy yourselves. Stay safe, stay well, stay happy, and I guess this word is more important than ever at this point in time, respectful. Really appreciate you all being here. I'll be back with you tomorrow morning, bright and early, as usual, breaking down any news that does break in the next 24 hours. And I look forward to speaking with you about it. Maybe there'll be some follow-up comments. If you've been affected by, of course, any of the topics that we discussed in today's show, there are certainly places that you can go to get support necessarily needed. If you experience or witness racism of any form of discrimination, of course, as well, that you can, of course, report it. Please do report it to your local police. And also, if you're in the stadium at the Emirates, there are ways to report racism as well. Let me just get the correct details for that. If you want to, you need to text the word foul and the seat row and number. Let me just find it to 67777. So text foul, that's FOUL, if you're ever in the Emirates and you witness any form of discrimination. Text foul to 67777 with details and, of course, the seat and row number where you've witnessed it. And it can, of course, help to tackle it. Thank you so much for listening. I'll speak to you tomorrow. Have a fantastic day. Stay safe, stay well, stay happy and respectful. And as always, up the Arsenal.